I'm Hazel Mitchell, 34, and 6 months ago, I inherited a beautiful mountain cabin from my beloved Aunt Grace. Between my hectic event planning business and personal life, I haven't had a chance to visit yet. Then yesterday, my phone pinged with a text from my cousin Rachel. Perfect. Your mountain cabin is just sitting there, we're making it our summer home. Attached was a photo of her family, luggage scattered across my porch. My stomach dropped. This wasn't the first time Rachel took something of mine without asking. Before I continue, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to deal with entitled relatives who think your property is their playground. To understand why this situation hit me so hard, you need to know about my Aunt Grace. She wasn't just any aunt, she was this wonderfully eccentric, fiercely independent woman who traveled to 47 countries before her 70th birthday. She never had children of her own, but she poured her love into her nieces and nephews. The difference was, Grace actually saw us as individuals, not just extensions of the family tree. People are who they are, Hazel, she used to tell me during our summer visits to the cabin. Watch carefully how they behave when they think no one important is looking. That cabin in the Vermont mountains was her sanctuary. Nestled among towering pines, overlooking a crystal-clear lake, it was the definition of peaceful seclusion. The nearest neighbor was a mile away, and the closest town was a 20-minute drive down a winding mountain road. The cabin itself wasn't enormous, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, an open kitchen living area with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the lake, and a wraparound porch where Grace and I would sit for hours. She'd tell stories about her adventures while I soaked in every word, imagining myself brave enough to explore the world one day. When Grace passed away last winter, I was devastated. During the reading of her will, I was shocked when her attorney announced she'd left the cabin specifically to me. To Hazel, he read, who understands the value of silence and respects the boundaries of others. At the time, I didn't fully understand what she meant by that last part. Now, I do. My career as an event planner keeps me insanely busy. 80-hour work weeks are normal for me. I coordinate everything from corporate conferences to celebrity weddings, and while I love the creativity and challenge of my job, it leaves little time for personal getaways. I'd been planning to visit the cabin on my next break, maybe turn it into a weekend retreat for myself, possibly even a vacation rental for carefully selected guests, who would appreciate its tranquility. Then there's my cousin Rachel. We grew up together, but we couldn't be more different. While I worked summer jobs from the age of 16, Rachel expected her parents to fund her lifestyle. When we were kids, she'd borrow my toys without asking and return them broken, if she returned them at all. By high school, she was taking my clothes and accessories, stretching them out, or staining them beyond repair. In college, she borrowed my car without permission and returned it with an empty tank and a mysterious dent she refused to acknowledge. Rachel married Marcus Wilson right out of college. Marcus comes from money, works in finance, and seems to think throwing cash at problems makes them disappear. They have 2 children, 14-year-old Caitlin and 11-year-old Trevor. The last time I visited their home for a family gathering, Caitlin was carving her name into an antique dining table, and Trevor was using a crystal vase as a soccer goal. Neither Rachel nor Marcus said a word. Over the years, I've tried to maintain a cordial relationship with Rachel for the sake of family harmony, but it's been challenging. She interprets basic boundaries as personal rejection, and basic requests as unreasonable demands. Our text exchanges over the past few months have followed a familiar pattern. Rachel, we should use Grace's cabin for the family reunion this summer. Me, I'm still settling the estate and haven't even visited yet. Maybe next year. Rachel, but it would be perfect. The whole family expects it. Me, I'm not ready to host yet. I'll let everyone know when I am. Rachel, you're being selfish. It's family property. Me, it's not family property. It belongs to me now. Rachel, that's just a technicality. Grace would want us all to enjoy it. I stopped responding after that last exchange, about a month ago. I figured the conversation was finished. Clearly, I was wrong. Yesterday was supposed to be a normal Thursday. I was wrapping up preparations for a corporate retreat when my phone buzzed with a text notification. I almost ignored it. I was in the zone, checking final details, but something made me glance down. The preview showed Rachel's name and the words, "Your mountain cabin." A sense of dread washed over me as I unlocked my phone. The complete message read, "Perfect. Your mountain cabin is just sitting there, we're making it our summer home. The kids are already loving it." Below it was a photo of Rachel, Marcus, Caitlin, and Trevor standing on the cabin's front porch, luggage piled behind them, wide grins on their faces. In the corner of the image, I could see what looked like their golden retriever's tail. I blinked, certain I was misunderstanding. They couldn't possibly have just moved in. Without asking. Without even telling me they were going. I zoomed in on the photo, and there was no mistaking it. That was definitely Grace's cabin. My cabin. And those were definitely their suitcases. Not weekend bags. Full-sized suitcases. My hands shaking slightly, I typed, "Rachel, are you visiting the cabin right now?" 3 dots appeared immediately, "Not visiting, silly. We're moving in for the summer. It's just sitting empty, and the kids needed a nature experience. We got here yesterday." The key was right where Grace always kept it. The hidden key. Of course. Grace had always kept a spare key in a false rock near the garden. I hadn't even thought to change that arrangement yet. I called Rachel immediately. She answered on the 4th ring, the sound of splashing and childish screams in the background. "Hey, Hazel. Can't talk long. The kids are in the lake, and I need to watch them." "Rachel," I said, working to keep my voice steady, "you can't just move into my cabin without asking." Her laugh was breezy, unconcerned. "Oh please, don't be so formal. It's family property." "No, it's not. It's my property. Aunt Grace left it to me." "On paper, sure. But that's just legal stuff. Grace would want the cabin used and full of life, not sitting empty while you're too busy to visit. We're actually doing you a favor, keeping it aired out." I took a deep breath. "Rachel, I need you to pack up and leave. Today." "Don't be ridiculous," she scoffed. "We just got settled. The kids are already enrolled in the summer camp program in town. Marcus set up his remote office in the sunroom." "Put Marcus on the phone, please. Maybe he'd be more reasonable." After a moment of muffled conversation, Marcus's smooth, confident voice came on the line. "Hazel. Great to hear from you. Beautiful place you've got here. Really stellar investment. Marcus, you need to leave. All of you. Today." "Look, I understand you're surprised," he said, his tone conciliatory but firm. "We should have given you a heads up. That's on us. But we're all settled now, and the kids are already having the time of their lives. Tell you what, we'll cover all utilities while we're here, plus a generous usage fee. Say, $2,000 for the summer. That's a fair market rate for this area." In the background, I heard a crash followed by Rachel's half-hearted Trevor, "Honey, be careful with Aunt Grace's things." "This isn't about money," I said, my anger rising. "It's about respect. Basic decency. You don't just move into someone else's property without permission. Family works differently, Marcus replied smoothly. Look, why don't you come up this weekend? See how well we're taking care of the place. We'll open a nice bottle of wine, grill some steaks. Another crash in the background, louder this time. Rachel's voice, distant. Caitlin, that cabinet is antique. Just try to clean it up before it stains. I'll be there tomorrow, I said firmly. Have your things packed and ready to go. I hung up before Marcus could respond and immediately called my closest friend, Stephanie. We've been friends since college, and she's one of the few people who truly understands my family dynamics. They did what? She exclaimed after I explained the situation. That's not just crossing a boundary, Hazel. That's demolishing it, salting the earth, and dancing on the ruins. I know, I groaned. I'm going up there tomorrow. I've already cancelled my meetings. Want me to come with you? I can be your backup. I considered it, but ultimately declined. I appreciate that, but I think this is something I need to handle myself. It's time, Rachel, and I had a real conversation about boundaries. After hanging up with Stephanie, I called my assistant to reschedule the next day's meetings and began packing an overnight bag. The 5-hour drive to Vermont would give me plenty of time to rehearse exactly what I wanted to say to Rachel and her family. As I drove north the next morning, memories of other Rachel incidents surfaced. The time she borrowed my prom dress and returned it with wine stains. The time she used my apartment for a party while I was out of town, resulting in noise complaints and a broken window. The time she gave my phone number to a multi-level marketing friend who harassed me for months. Each memory fueled my determination to finally establish firm boundaries. Yet beneath my anger lurked a more complicated emotion. Rachel and I had once been close, building sandcastles on family vacations and whispering secrets during holiday gatherings. Where had that connection gone? And was I partially responsible for its loss? Had my focus on career success created distance that Rachel was now, in her misguided way, trying to bridge? I pushed these thoughts aside as I turned onto the familiar gravel road leading to the cabin. This wasn't about childhood nostalgia. This was about respect, boundaries, and property rights. And it was time Rachel learned all three concepts. The first sign that something was wrong came when I pulled into the cabin's gravel driveway. Two unfamiliar cars were parked haphazardly, blocking the usual spot under the old oak tree. One had a luggage carrier on top, stuffed to bursting. The other had bike racks with 4 expensive-looking mountain bikes. Music blasted from somewhere inside the cabin, not Grace's preferred classical or jazz, but pounding pop music with heavy bass that seemed to vibrate the very windows. I parked behind them, blocking both cars in, and took a moment to compose myself. The peaceful sanctuary, I remembered, was already transformed. Toys littered the front yard. A half-deflated kiddie pool leaned against the porch. 2 beach towels hung from the porch railing, dripping onto Grace's carefully tended flower beds below. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my overnight bag and marched up to the front door. It wasn't locked. I pushed it open and stepped into chaos. The open concept living area that had once been immaculately arranged now looked like a hurricane had hit a sporting goods store. Sneakers, flip-flops, and hiking boots created a hazardous path across the hardwood floor. Swim goggles, tennis rackets, and various electronic devices covered every surface. A wet swimsuit lay in a puddle on Grace's antique coffee table, the water already creating a visible ring on the wood. Rachel was in the kitchen area, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing animatedly while stirring something on the stove. She glanced up, saw me, and waved casually as if I were an expected dinner guest, not the owner of the property she had invaded. "Gotta go, Jen. Talk later," she said into the phone before hanging up. "Hazel. You made it. Did you hit traffic? We weren't expecting you until dinner time. I set my bag down slowly, taking in more details of the destruction. Caitlin sat cross-legged on Grace's antique Persian rug, painting her nails a bright purple. Drops of polish spotted the delicate fibers. Trevor was nowhere to be seen, but the crashing sounds from the back bedroom gave a good indication of his whereabouts. And despite the cabin's strict no-pets policy, a rule Grace had established due to her severe allergies, their golden retriever snoozed on the sofa, shedding liberally across the cushions. "Rachel," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger, "what have you done to my cabin?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. We're just living." The place needed some energy. Marcus emerged from what had been Grace's home office, wearing shorts and a polo shirt, wireless earbuds in his ears. He pulled one out when he saw me. "Hazel. Welcome." He strode over, hand extended as if this were his home and I the visitor. "Good drive up. Roads are beautiful this time of year." I ignored his hand. "I told you to be packed and ready to leave." Marcus's smile dimmed slightly. "Look, I understand you're upset about the surprise nature of our visit. That's fair. We should have called first. This isn't a visit, Marcus. You've moved in without permission. That's trespassing." Rachel abandoned her cooking and joined us, wiping her hands on a dish towel I recognized as one of Grace's hand-embroidered linens. "Let's not throw around legal terms, Hazel. We're family. Family shares." "Not without asking," I countered. "And not without respect for other people's property." I gestured to the nail polish stains, the water rings, the general disarray. Rachel's expression hardened. "The kids are enjoying themselves. That's what matters. That's what Grace would have wanted." "Don't tell me what Grace would have wanted," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "She specifically left this cabin to me, because she knew I would respect it." At that moment, Trevor burst into the room, wearing swim trunks and carrying what appeared to be Grace's antique barometer, a delicate instrument that had hung in the hallway for decades. "Mom. This thing is broken," he announced, shaking it roughly. "Trevor," I exclaimed, rushing forward to rescue the fragile device. "That's not a toy. It's a 100-year-old scientific instrument." The boy reluctantly handed it over, looking to his mother for support. Rachel sighed dramatically. "See what I mean? So uptight about things. They're just objects, Hazel." "They're not just objects," I retorted. "They're Grace's treasures. Items she collected over a lifetime of adventure. Items she trusted me to protect." Marcus stepped between us, ever the mediator. "Let's all take a breath. Hazel, I understand your position. We should have asked permission. That's on us." He pulled out his wallet and extracted a credit card. "Let me make it right. We'll pay for any damages, plus a generous rental fee for the summer. Say, $5,000. That's well above market rate." I stared at him, incredulous. "This isn't about money, Marcus. It's about respect. Basic human decency. Which we're showing by offering fair compensation," he countered smoothly. "You're missing the point entirely," I said. "I want you out. Today." Rachel's face flushed with anger. "We're not leaving. The kids are enrolled in summer programs. Marcus has work calls scheduled from here. We've already invited friends for the 4th of July weekend." "You did what?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Just a small gathering," Marcus interjected quickly. "Close friends. Maybe 20 people." "Absolutely not," I stated firmly. "No one is having any gatherings here. You're all leaving tomorrow morning. And where are we supposed to go? Rachel demanded, hands on hips. Our house is being renovated. That's why we needed a summer place to begin with. This was the first I'd heard of any renovation. That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. You should have thought about accommodations before you scheduled renovations. We did, Rachel shot back. We thought about this perfectly good cabin sitting empty, while you're too busy playing event planner to the stars to even visit once. Our argument was interrupted by a wet snuffling at my leg. I looked down to see their golden retriever, drooling onto my jeans. And pets, Rachel. You know Grace was severely allergic. The cabin has always been pet-free. Rachel shrugged. Grace isn't here anymore, is she? And Buddy is part of our family. We couldn't leave him behind. That callous comment about Grace was the final straw. You have until morning, I said, my voice cold. If you're not gone by 9 a.m., I'm calling the sheriff. You wouldn't dare, Rachel gasped. Try me. I turned and walked to the master bedroom, intending to at least secure my own space for the night, only to find the king-sized bed covered in Rachel and Marcus's belongings, their suitcases open on the floor, clothes spilling out. We took the master, Rachel called from behind me. It has the best view. You can use the kids' room. Caitlin's bunking with Trevor tonight. I turned slowly. Let me get this straight. You break into my cabin, damage Grace's treasured possessions, plan parties without permission, bring a pet against all rules, and now you expect me to sleep in the kids' room while you enjoy the master suite. Rachel had the audacity to look offended. We didn't break in. We used the key. And it's just sleeping arrangements, Hazel. Don't be so territorial. Too angry to continue the conversation, I grabbed my bag and headed for the couch. At least I could keep an eye on the main living space overnight and prevent further damage. As I settled in for what promised to be a sleepless night, I heard Rachel murmuring to Marcus, she's always been like this. So uptight about everything. Grace would be disappointed. I bit my tongue and stared at the ceiling, memories of Grace's gentle wisdom washing over me. Tomorrow would be soon enough to set things right. I awoke to the smell of bacon and the sound of children arguing. For a moment, disoriented on the couch, I thought I was back in childhood, spending a summer morning at the cabin with Grace cooking breakfast. Then reality crashed back as Rachel's voice cut through the children's squabble. Trevor, let your sister use the tablet. Caitlin, stop whining. It's too beautiful a day to spend on devices anyway. I sat up, my back aching from the lumpy couch, and checked my watch. 8:17 a.m. Less than an hour until my deadline for them to leave. Based on the kitchen activity and general atmosphere, they weren't preparing to depart. I folded the blanket I'd used and approached the kitchen area, where Rachel was flipping pancakes while scrolling through her phone. No sign of packing. No indication they had any intention of respecting my ultimatum. Good morning, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I see you haven't started packing yet. Rachel didn't even look up from her phone. We're not going anywhere, Hazel. I told you yesterday, we're set up for the summer. And I told you yesterday, you have until 9 to leave. It's already past 8. Or what? You'll call the sheriff. She finally looked at me, rolling her eyes. On family. You wouldn't. Family respects each other's boundaries, I countered. Family asks before taking. Family doesn't destroy precious heirlooms. I gestured to a new water ring on the coffee table, likely from someone's drink the night before. Speaking of family, Rachel said, ignoring my points entirely, I forgot to mention that Aunt Susan and Uncle Paul are driving up for the weekend. They should be here around lunchtime. The casual way she dropped this bomb left me momentarily speechless. Susan was our father's sister, a well-meaning, but easily manipulated woman who had always favored Rachel. You invited more people. Without asking me. I finally managed. Family is always welcome, Rachel said with a shrug. That's what Grace believed. Before I could respond, I noticed something missing from the mantelpiece, a small jewelry box where Grace had kept some of her most treasured pieces, including a sapphire pendant our grandfather had given her on their 50th anniversary. Where's Grace's jewelry box? I asked sharply. Rachel paused, spatula in mid-air. What jewelry box? The wooden one that was on the mantel. With the carved birds. Oh, that. Caitlin was looking at it yesterday. It's probably in her room. I marched to the children's bedroom, where Caitlin was stretched across the lower bunk, headphones on, completely absorbed in her phone. The room looked like a clothing bomb had exploded, drawers left open, clothes strewn everywhere, candy wrappers littering the floor. No sign of the jewelry box. Caitlin, I said loudly. No response. Caitlin. I repeated, tapping her shoulder. She jumped, pulling off her headphones with an annoyed expression. What? Where's the jewelry box that was on the mantel? Your mom said you had it. She shrugged. I don't know. I looked at it yesterday, but it was just a bunch of old lady jewelry. That old lady jewelry includes family heirlooms worth thousands of dollars, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Where did you put the box? Another shrug. Maybe back on the shelf. Or in the bathroom. I don't remember. A thorough search of the bathroom yielded nothing. Neither did the shelves in the living room, nor any other obvious location. When I returned to the kitchen, my concern evident, Rachel seemed unconcerned. It'll turn up, she said dismissively. This place is small. Nothing stays lost for long. Through the window, I noticed Caitlin had wandered outside and was now using a pocket knife to carve something into one of the wooden porch posts that Grace and our grandfather had hand-hewn decades ago. Rachel! I exclaimed, pointing. Caitlin is vandalizing the porch posts. Rachel glanced out the window and shrugged. She's just making her mark. Kids do that. Not on 100-year-old hand-carved wood, they don't. I hurried outside to stop the damage. It's no big deal, Caitlin protested when I confiscated the knife. I was just carving my name so people know I was here. This isn't a public park, Caitlin. It's my private property, and these posts are irreplaceable historical pieces. She rolled her eyes in a perfect imitation of her mother. Whatever. It's just wood. Just as I was about to respond, a frantic barking caught my attention. Trevor had let the dog off its leash, and the animal was now racing toward the neighboring property, where the Henderson family kept their small flock of sheep. Trevor! I shouted. Get your dog. The Hendersons have livestock. The boy just stood there, watching with amusement as Buddy disappeared into the trees, barking wildly. Marcus finally emerged from the master bedroom, coffee in hand, as I was trying to explain to Trevor why his dog could cause serious problems with the neighbors. What's all the commotion? He asked, looking freshly showered and completely unconcerned. Your son let the dog loose, and it's headed for the neighbor's sheep pasture, I explained tersely. Marcus shrugged. Buddy's friendly. He won't hurt anything. That's not the point. The Hendersons have the right to protect their livestock. If Buddy chases their sheep, they might. I couldn't even finish the sentence. The thought of the gentle dog getting hurt, because of the family's carelessness, was too much. I grabbed a leash from the hook by the door and took off toward the Henderson property, calling for Buddy. Behind me, I heard Marcus mutter something about overreacting to Rachel. By the time I returned with a muddy, panting Buddy in tow, a new problem had emerged. The water pressure in the kitchen sink had dropped to a trickle, and brown sludge was backing up in the bathroom sink. "What did you do to the plumbing?" I demanded, handing the dog's leash to Trevor. "Nothing," Rachel insisted. "It just started happening this morning." "Did you put food down the kitchen drain?" "The septic system here is very sensitive." Rachel and Marcus exchanged guilty glances. "Maybe some pasta. And possibly some chicken bones," Rachel admitted. "Chicken bones? In a sink with no garbage disposal?" I was incredulous. The septic tank was just emptied before Grace passed away. It shouldn't be having issues unless someone abused it. As if on cue, a truck pulled into the driveway. A weathered man in his 60s climbed out, toolbox in hand. I recognized him as Bill Henderson, the local handyman, who had helped Grace maintain the cabin for years. "Morning," he called as he approached the porch. "Got a call about some plumbing issues. Something about a backed-up sink and low water pressure." I looked at Rachel, who had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I called Bill this morning when the sink started acting up," she admitted. "Mrs. Wilson said it was urgent," Bill explained. "Said you'd pay extra for the weekend service call." "Of course she did." I sighed and turned to Bill. "I'm Hazel Mitchell, Grace's niece. The cabin belongs to me now." "Ah, figured as much," Bill said, nodding. "Grace mentioned she was leaving it to you. Smart woman, your aunt. Had a good head on her shoulders." He glanced at the house. "Sorry about your loss. Grace was good people." "Thank you," I said sincerely. "And yes, we apparently do have a plumbing issue. The family here, I couldn't bring myself to claim relation to them at the moment, put food waste down the drain." Bill shook his head. "That'll do it. Old systems like this can't handle much. Let me take a look." After examining both sinks and checking the water pressure throughout the cabin, Bill confirmed my suspicion. Someone had put substantial food waste down the kitchen drain, clogging the main line. He'd need to snake it out, possibly even dig up part of the yard if the clog was bad enough. Looking at about 4 hours of work, he estimated. Plus parts if we need them. Weekend rates, that'll run you about $600, give or take. I nodded, resigned. "Do what you need to do." Bill hesitated. "Usually take payment upfront for new clients, if you don't mind." Had some issues with tourists skipping out on Bill's last summer. "Of course," I agreed, reaching for my wallet. "Actually," Rachel interjected, "we called, so we'll pay." She pulled out her credit card and handed it to Bill. At least she was taking responsibility for something. Bill ran the card through his mobile reader, then frowned. "Sorry, Cards declined." Rachel's cheeks flushed. "That's impossible. Try again." Bill tried again with the same result. Rachel fumbled in her purse for another card, which was also declined. Looking increasingly flustered, she called for Marcus, who had mysteriously disappeared. "Marcus is on an important business call," Caitlin informed us, walking through the kitchen with a bowl of cereal that was dripping milk onto the hardwood floor. He said not to disturb him. I paid Bill with my own card, adding it to the mental tally of expenses this invasion was costing me. As he headed outside to get his equipment, I confronted Rachel. "Where's Marcus?" "Really?" She avoided my eyes. "He had an emergency work call. Very important client." "Convenient timing," I remarked dryly. "Just when there are bills to pay and problems to solve." Rachel's phone chimed with a text. She glanced at it, then brightened. "That's Susan and Paul. They're about 30 minutes away. They're bringing lunch. I stared at her in disbelief. Are you not listening to anything I've said? You're all supposed to be gone by now. Instead, you've invited more people. I told you we're staying, Rachel snapped. And I've also called Dad. He agrees with me that it's ridiculous for you to keep this huge cabin to yourself when the whole family could use it. My Uncle Robert, our fathers were brothers, was a reasonable man. I doubt Dad said that. He understands property rights. Well, he's coming up tomorrow with Mom to discuss it. I called a family meeting. I felt like I was in some bizarre alternate reality. You called a family meeting? At my cabin? Without asking me? It concerns everyone, Rachel said stubbornly. If you won't share willingly, maybe the family needs to contest the will. Grace couldn't have been thinking clearly when she left everything to just you. The threat to contest the will, to challenge Grace's final wishes, was the last straw. I was about to really let loose when I noticed something on the bookshelf that made my blood run cold. Grace's cherished photo album, the one documenting her world travels, lay open on the bottom shelf, a large purple stain spreading across several pages. Someone had spilled grape juice or wine on it and simply left it to soak in. I carefully picked up the album. Photographs that Grace had meticulously collected and preserved for decades were now stuck together, the images blurring as the liquid seeped through the pages. Irreplaceable memories were literally dissolving before my eyes. Who did this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel glanced over. Oh, Trevor had a little accident with his grape juice last night. I told him to clean it up. This was Grace's life, I said, holding up the ruined album. These were her memories. Her legacy. For the first time, Rachel looked genuinely contrite. I didn't realize it was that important. Everything here was important to her, I said, fighting back tears. That's what you never understood. Things mattered to Grace not because of their monetary value, but because of the memories and stories attached to them. A car horn sounded outside. Aunt Susan and Uncle Paul had arrived. As Rachel hurried to greet them, I remained rooted in place, cradling the damaged album and wondering how this situation had spiraled so completely out of control. By mid-afternoon, the cabin had transformed from chaotic to downright circus-like. Aunt Susan and Uncle Paul had arrived with enough food for a week-long stay, clearly under the impression that Rachel was hosting a legitimate family gathering. Bill the handyman was still working on the plumbing, occasionally muttering about city folks who didn't understand septic systems. The kids were running wild, Trevor having invited 2 local boys he'd met to come swim in the lake, while Caitlin blasted music from a portable speaker that made conversation nearly impossible. I'd retreated to the small screened porch off the kitchen, one of Grace's favorite reading spots, trying to collect my thoughts and plan my next move. The damaged photo album lay in my lap as I carefully separated pages, assessing what could be salvaged. Susan found me there, looking concerned. Rachel says you're upset about them using the cabin, she began tentatively. I looked at my aunt in disbelief. They didn't use it, Susan. They broke in, moved in without permission, damaged Grace's belongings, and are now refusing to leave. And apparently Rachel's called some sort of family intervention for tomorrow. Susan shifted uncomfortably. Well, she did mention concerns about the will. Several of us were surprised that Grace left the cabin solely to you. Are you serious right now? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're actually considering supporting Rachel's tantrum. It's not a tantrum, dear. It's a reasonable concern. Family property should be shared. It's not family property, I repeated for what felt like the 100th time. Grace left it to me. She had her reasons. Susan patted my hand condescendingly. Grace was getting on in years, Hazel. She might not have been thinking clearly. I pulled my hand away. Grace was sharper at 82 than most people are at 42. Her mind was perfectly sound. Well, that's for lawyers to determine, I suppose, Susan sniffed. Robert has already consulted someone about contesting. She was interrupted by a crash from inside, followed by Rachel's half-hearted Trevor, "Honey, please be careful." Susan excused herself to go help with lunch preparations, leaving me seething. Contest the will. They were actually going to challenge Grace's final wishes. The sheer entitlement was staggering. Marcus appeared in the doorway, looking inappropriately cheerful for someone who'd been hiding all morning. "There you are, Hazel. Beautiful day, isn't it? Listen, I had a thought about this whole situation. What if we formalized an arrangement? The Wilson family gets the cabin for summers, you get it fall through spring. We handle summer maintenance, you handle winter. Everyone wins." "Everyone except me," I pointed out. "And Grace, whose wishes you're completely disregarding." He waved this away. "Grace would want the place used and loved. That's what family properties are for." "For the last time, Marcus, it's not family property." His smile tightened. "Well, that might change after tomorrow's meeting. Rachel's father seems quite confident about the legal options. Something about Grace's mental state in her final year. The implication that they would claim Grace was mentally incompetent, that her decision to leave me the cabin was somehow the result of diminished capacity rather than deliberate choice, filled me with cold fury. "Get out," I said quietly. "Excuse me. Get out of my cabin. All of you. Now." Marcus's patronizing smile returned. "Let's not be hasty. The family's already gathering. Robert and Linda will be here tomorrow morning. We can discuss this like adults." "There's nothing to discuss," I cut him off. "This is my property. You are trespassing. Either you leave voluntarily, or I call the sheriff." "You're being unreasonable," Marcus said, his friendly facade cracking slightly. "Rachel," he called over his shoulder. "Could you come in here?" Rachel appeared moments later, followed by Susan, Paul, and both children. Even Bill the handyman had wandered in, curious about the commotion. "Hazel's threatening to call the sheriff," Marcus announced, as if reporting a child's tantrum. Rachel crossed her arms. "Seriously, Hazel? On family?" "Family doesn't do what you've done," I said, rising to my feet. "Family doesn't break in, destroy precious mementos, threaten legal action when they don't get their way, or try to steal what rightfully belongs to someone else." "Steal?" Rachel's voice rose. "This cabin should belong to all of us. Grace would have wanted it that way." "You have no idea what Grace would have wanted," I shot back. "You barely visited her in her final years. You were too busy with your country club memberships and luxury vacations to make time for an elderly aunt." "That's not fair," Rachel protested. "We came for Christmas that one year." "Once? You came once in 5 years. I was here every month. I drove her to medical appointments, helped maintain this cabin, listened to her stories and her wishes." Caitlin had pulled out her phone and was recording the argument, a smirk on her face. Trevor watched wide-eyed, unused to seeing adults in genuine conflict. "Put that phone away," I told Caitlin sharply. "This isn't entertainment." "You can't tell her what to do," Rachel snapped. "She's my daughter. In my house, my rules apply." "It's not your house," Rachel practically shouted. "It's a family legacy that you're hoarding." Susan stepped forward in an attempt to mediate. "Girls, please. This isn't productive. Let's all calm down and wait for Robert to arrive tomorrow. He's the eldest, he can help sort this out. There's nothing to sort, I insisted. Grace's will was perfectly clear. Grace was old and confused, Rachel countered. She didn't know what she was doing. The casual cruelty and disrespect in that statement silenced the room. Even Marcus looked uncomfortable. Rachel, Paul murmured, that's going too far. In the awkward silence that followed, I noticed something I hadn't before, a loose floorboard near the hearth, slightly raised, as if recently disturbed. Grace had shown me that hidden compartment years ago, a secret spot where she kept important documents and letters. Moving with purpose, I crossed to the fireplace and knelt down. Everyone watched in confusion as I pried up the floorboard, revealing the small compartment beneath. Inside was a metal box, just as I remembered. I pulled it out, hands trembling slightly, and lifted the lid. Inside were several envelopes, each labeled in Grace's elegant handwriting. One bore my name. Another was simply marked, family. What is that? Rachel demanded, moving closer. Grace's private papers, I replied, opening the envelope with my name. Inside was a letter dated just 3 months before her death, written in Grace's distinctive hand. My dearest Hazel. If you're reading this, it means I've passed on and you've found my hiding spot. Good girl. I always knew you paid attention to the things that matter. I'm leaving you this letter, because I suspect my decision regarding the cabin may cause some family tension. You know how Rachel can be. Always wanting what others have, never appreciating what she possesses. I'm leaving the cabin to you, and only you, for several reasons. First, you're the only one who truly loves it for what it is, not as a status symbol, or a vacation property, but as a piece of family history, a sanctuary of peace. Second, you've demonstrated respect for my wishes, for the cabin's legacy, and for the natural environment that surrounds it. Third, frankly, I don't trust Rachel not to sell it to developers the moment a lucrative offer comes along. If anyone questions my decision, or my mental capacity, please share the enclosed medical evaluation from Dr. Martin, conducted 2 weeks before I finalized my will. As you'll see, I was declared sharp as a tack, and fully competent to make financial and legal decisions. Trust your instincts, Hazel. Set boundaries where needed. The cabin is yours to use as you see fit. If you choose to share it, do so on your terms, not because you're bullied into it. Remember what I always told you, people are who they are. Watch carefully how they behave when they think no one important is looking. With all my love. Aunt Grace. I finished reading and looked up. Rachel's face had drained of color. Susan and Paul looked embarrassed. Marcus seemed to be rapidly recalculating his approach. There's another letter, I said, picking up the envelope marked family. Should I read it aloud? No one objected, though Rachel looked like she might be sick. To my extended family. If this letter is being read, it means someone has challenged Hazel's rightful ownership of the cabin. I expected as much, which is why I prepared this document. Let me be absolutely clear. I left the cabin to Hazel Mitchell with full mental capacity, and after careful deliberation. My decision was not made out of confusion, manipulation, or lack of options. Rachel, I know you've always viewed the cabin as a status symbol and vacation spot. I've watched how you've treated it during your visits, leaving messes for others to clean, ignoring house rules, treating precious mementos as disposable objects. The cabin deserves better stewardship. I've documented several instances that influenced my decision. July 2018. Rachel allowed her children to carve initials into antique furniture. December 2019. Rachel borrowed family heirlooms without permission. August 2020. Rachel suggested selling the lakefront portion to developers. May 2021. Rachel brought pets despite my severe allergies and explicit rules. This cabin represents my life's memories. I entrusted it to the person who demonstrated the most respect for its history and my wishes. That person is Hazel. If anyone contests this decision, my attorney has instructions to fight vigorously, using the extensive documentation I've provided of my mental competence and the reasoning behind my choice. Family means respect, not entitlement. Remember that. Grace Mitchell. Silence fell when I finished reading. Rachel was the first to break it, her voice small and uncertain. She documented all that, she whispered. Apparently, I replied, scanning the remaining papers in the box. There are photographs, notes, even some recordings mentioned here. She was spying on us. Rachel's indignation flared briefly. No, I corrected her. She was paying attention. There's a difference. Marcus cleared his throat. Well, this puts things in a different light. Perhaps we've been hasty in our assumptions. Rachel shot him an incredulous look. You're giving up. Just like that. Marcus straightened his shoulders. I'm recognizing reality, Rachel. Grace was clearly of sound mind and had specific reasons for her decisions. Contesting the will would be expensive, protracted, and, based on this evidence, unsuccessful. For once, Rachel seemed at a loss for words. Caitlin had stopped recording and was staring at her mother with new eyes. Trevor had edged closer to his father, sensing the shift in power dynamics. So what happens now? Susan asked quietly. I tucked Grace's letters back into the box. Now, you all pack up and leave. Today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. To my surprise, it was Marcus who nodded first. That seems reasonable. We've clearly overstepped. He turned to Rachel. We'll go to that resort in the Berkshires instead. The one with the spa you liked. Rachel looked from Marcus to me, then back again. The fight seemed to drain out of her. Fine, she said finally. We'll go. But this isn't over, Hazel. You can't just shut out family. I'm not shutting out family, I replied calmly. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference. As the others filed out to begin packing, Marcus lingered behind. I apologize, he said quietly. This was not our finest moment. The renovation stress, Rachel's attachment to the cabin, it's no excuse, but there were factors. I nodded, not quite ready to forgive, but appreciating the gesture nonetheless. I'll make sure everything's repaired, he continued. The porch post, the plumbing, any damage the kids caused. I'll have professional cleaners come in tomorrow. Thank you, I said. That would be helpful. He hesitated, then added, Rachel isn't always like this. She has good qualities too. I know, I acknowledged. We all have our moments. This just wasn't one of her better ones. Marcus nodded and left to help with the packing. I remained by the fireplace, Grace's box of letters in my lap, feeling her presence more strongly than I had since her passing. She'd anticipated this conflict. She'd prepared for it. And somehow, even from beyond, she'd helped me navigate it. Outside, I could hear Rachel directing the children to gather their belongings. Susan and Paul were making awkward goodbyes to Bill, who was finishing up the plumbing repairs. The chaos was subsiding, order slowly returning. I opened Grace's letter to me again, and reread the final lines. Trust your instincts, Hazel. Set boundaries where needed. The cabin is yours to use as you see fit. For the first time since arriving, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. The cabin would be mine again by nightfall. Grace's sanctuary would be restored. And perhaps, in standing up for myself, I'd finally fulfilled the potential Grace had always seen in me. The next morning, I awoke to something I hadn't experienced since arriving at the cabin: silence. No arguments between children, no pounding music, no Rachel barking orders or Marcus on business calls. Just the gentle chirping of birds outside and the distant lapping of lake water against the shore. I stretched luxuriously in the master bedroom, my bedroom now, and took a moment to appreciate the peace. Rachel, Marcus, and their children had departed around 7 p.m. the previous evening, Marcus practically dragging Rachel to the car when she attempted one last negotiation about visitation rights to the cabin. Susan and Paul, looking embarrassed by the entire situation, had left shortly after, promising to talk sense into Robert before he made the drive up. I'd spent the evening cleaning, organizing, and documenting damage for insurance purposes. The cabin was still far from its former glory. The carved porch post couldn't be uncarved, the stained Persian rug would need professional cleaning, and Grace's photo album was sadly beyond repair. But the space already felt more like the sanctuary I remembered. My phone chimed with a text message. I expected another volley from Rachel, but instead found a message from Uncle Robert: talked with Susan. No need for meeting tomorrow. Grace's wishes should be respected. Call if you need anything. At least some family members could be reasonable. I wondered if Susan had shown him Grace's letters, or if his sense of propriety had prevailed on its own. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I threw on a robe and went to answer it, finding Bill Henderson standing on the porch with his toolbox. "Morning, Miss Mitchell," he greeted me. "Just wanted to check the plumbing work from yesterday. Make sure everything's holding up." I invited him in, grateful for his thoroughness. As he inspected the kitchen sink and bathroom, he chatted amiably about Grace. "Your aunt was one special lady," he remarked. "Smart as they come. Had this place running like clockwork, even in her 80s. "She was remarkable," I agreed. "I still can't believe she's gone sometimes." "Folks like that never really leave," Bill said, testing the water pressure. "Their spirit stays in the places they loved." After declaring the plumbing sound, Bill refused payment for the follow-up visit. "Already charged enough yesterday," he insisted. "This is just making sure the job was done right." As he was leaving, he hesitated on the porch steps. "That cousin of yours, she's always been a handful, hasn't she?" I smiled ruefully. "That's putting it mildly." "Grace used to tell stories," Bill continued, "about how that one would show up with no warning, make a mess, leave without cleaning. Grace never complained outright, but you could tell it bothered her." "It bothered her more than she let on," I said, thinking of Grace's hidden letters. Bill nodded. "Well, for what it's worth, she'd be proud of you for standing up for yourself. Not many folks would have the backbone to stand firm against family pressure like that." His words warmed me more than he could know. After Bill left, I was about to start deeper cleaning when my phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. I briefly considered ignoring it, then reluctantly answered. "Hazel, good morning," he began formally. "I wanted to let you know I've arranged for cleaning services to come tomorrow at 10, if that's acceptable. They'll handle the rug, floors, and general deep cleaning." "Thank you, Marcus. That's very helpful. I've also contacted a woodworker about the porch post. He can't undo the carving, but he believes he can sand it down and refinish it to minimize the damage." I was surprised by his thoroughness. "I appreciate that." There was an awkward pause before he continued. "I also wanted to apologize again. More sincerely this time. What we did, what Rachel orchestrated and I enabled, was inexcusable. Why did you go along with it?" I couldn't help asking. He sighed heavily. "The path of least resistance, I suppose. Rachel had been talking about the cabin non-stop since Grace passed. When our house renovation ran over schedule, and we needed a place for the summer, she presented it as the perfect solution. I knew we should ask permission, but Rachel doesn't like hearing no, I finished for him. Exactly, he admitted. I've spent 15 years avoiding conflicts, by throwing money at problems or giving in. It's easier than dealing with her anger. That doesn't sound like a healthy marriage, Marcus. Another heavy sigh. No, it isn't. This situation has made that painfully clear. I felt a twinge of sympathy despite myself. What will you do now? I've booked us into a resort for the next month. After that, I've suggested marriage counseling. Strongly suggested it. And Rachel agreed. Not yet. But I'm making it a condition of continuing our financial arrangements. I raised my eyebrows, impressed despite myself. That's quite a stand for you. Yeah, well, seeing Grace's letter was a wake-up call. The way she described Rachel, and by extension, me as her enabler, was uncomfortably accurate. I don't want our kids growing up thinking that behavior is acceptable. Speaking of the children, how are Caitlin and Trevor taking all this? Surprisingly well, Marcus replied. Caitlin was actually embarrassed by her mother's behavior. She asked me this morning if we could send you something to replace the photo album. That unexpected gesture of remorse touched me. That's very thoughtful of her. She's not a bad kid, Marcus said. Just poorly guided sometimes. Trevor too. They've never had consistent boundaries. Well, maybe this is a turning point, I suggested. I hope so. Anyway, I'll text you the cleaning service details. And Hazel. Thank you for not involving the sheriff. I know you could have, and we would have deserved it. After hanging up, I sat on the porch swing, contemplating this unexpected development. The Marcus who'd just called seemed vastly different from the enabling husband who'd tried to bribe me yesterday. People could change, I supposed, when properly motivated. My contemplation was interrupted by another unexpected visitor, Rachel. She pulled up in a rental car, alone, looking uncharacteristically subdued as she approached the porch. My guard immediately went up. Rachel. What are you doing here? She raised her hands in a placating gesture. I'm not staying. She pulled something from her purse, Grace's missing jewelry box. I came to return this. I took the box carefully, opening it to find everything intact, including the sapphire pendant. You took this? Caitlin did, actually. She thought it was costume jewelry. I found it in her bag this morning. Rachel looked genuinely contrite. I'm sorry, Hazel. For everything. I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation. That's unexpected coming from you. A flash of irritation crossed her features before she visibly tamped it down. I deserved that. Look, I was wrong. Reading Grace's letters, hearing how she really saw me. Her voice caught. It wasn't a flattering picture. No, I agreed it wasn't. I always thought Grace and I had a special bond, Rachel continued. Finding out that she actually saw through me all along was devastating. She loved you, I said, surprising myself with the reassurance. She just saw your flaws clearly. Grace was good at that, loving people while still recognizing their true nature. Rachel nodded, blinking back tears. Marcus is talking about counseling. For me individually and for us as a couple. He mentioned that. Are you considering it? I don't think I have much choice. He's been different since yesterday. More assertive. That might be a good thing, I suggested. For both of you. Rachel looked out at the lake, her expression pensive. Maybe. Anyway, I didn't come to discuss my marriage. I wanted to tell you that I've talked to Dad. He won't be contesting the will. None of us will. Thank you, I said simply. And? She hesitated, then continued, the kids want to make amends. Trevor wrote you a letter. She handed me an envelope with childish handwriting. And Caitlin's working on something. A sort of memory book, with blank pages where you can place new photos. I was genuinely touched. That's very thoughtful. They're not bad kids, Rachel said defensively. Just poorly guided sometimes, I finished, echoing Marcus's words. I know. An awkward silence fell between us, 20 years of sisterly competition and resentment too complex to address in one driveway conversation. So what now? Rachel finally asked. Is this it? Are we just done as family? I considered the question carefully. No, I decided. We're not done. But things need to change. Boundaries need to be respected. What kind of boundaries? For starters, no one uses the cabin without explicit permission. If you want to visit, you ask first. You follow the house rules. You treat Grace's things, and my things, with respect. Rachel nodded, accepting these terms. And if there are visits, I continued, they are visits, not takeovers. A weekend, maybe. Not an entire summer. That's fair, Rachel acknowledged. And in return? In return, the door remains open. Not wide open, but open enough that we can try to rebuild some trust. I'm not shutting out family, Rachel. I'm just insisting on mutual respect. She extended her hand. I can work with that. We shook on it, the gesture feeling oddly formal and significant. As Rachel turned to leave, she paused. Grace was right about you, you know. You are the right person for this place. I wouldn't have preserved it the way you will. It was the closest thing to a genuine compliment I'd received from her in years. After she drove away, I opened Trevor's letter. In messy 11-year-old handwriting, he'd written, Dear Aunt Hazel. I'm sorry I let Buddy run loose and spilled juice on the photo book. I didn't mean to wreck stuff. Dad says Aunt Grace left you the cabin, because you take care of things and I should learn from that. Maybe you could teach me about the cabin sometime. I want to learn to fish. Sorry again. Trevor. P.S. I made you a wooden boat. Dad helped. It's not very good, but I tried. Enclosed was a small, clumsily carved wooden boat. Despite its rough appearance, it was clearly made with effort and care, perhaps the first time Trevor had created rather than destroyed. I placed the boat on the mantel, next to a photo of Grace, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. The past 2 days had been exhausting, infuriating, and ultimately transformative. I'd stood my ground, protected Grace's legacy, and perhaps even sparked positive changes in my extended family. That evening, I sat alone on the porch, watching the sunset paint the lake in brilliant oranges and pinks. For the first time since inheriting the cabin, I felt truly at home. More importantly, I felt worthy of Grace's trust in me. I had protected what mattered, just as she would have wanted. Tomorrow, the cleaners would come. The woodworker would repair what could be repaired. Life would move forward. And perhaps, in time, even the relationship with Rachel could be restored, not to what it had been, but to something healthier, more honest, more mutually respectful. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, I could almost hear Grace's gentle voice, People are who they are, Hazel. Watch carefully how they behave when they think no one important is looking. I'd watched. I'd learned. And in the process, I'd discovered important truths not just about others, but about myself. 6 months have passed since the dramatic showdown at the cabin. Winter has settled over the Vermont mountains, coating the pines with snow and freezing the lake into a smooth, glassy expanse. Inside, a fire crackles in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across Grace's restored living room. The cabin has undergone quite a transformation since that chaotic summer weekend. Marcus made good on his promise to repair the damages. The professional cleaners he hired removed most stains from the antique rugs. The woodworker did a remarkable job with the carved porch post. You can barely see Caitlin's handiwork now beneath the skilled refinishing. My relationship with the extended family has evolved as well. The incident proved to be something of a watershed moment, forcing everyone to confront unhealthy dynamics that had festered for years. Rachel and Marcus are still together, somewhat to my surprise. They've been in marriage counseling since August. According to our occasional phone conversations, Rachel has also started individual therapy to address what her therapist diplomatically calls her entitlement patterns and boundary issues. She's not exactly transformed overnight. A lifetime of behavior doesn't change in 6 months, but she's making genuine efforts. The most noticeable change is in Marcus. Finding his voice in that crisis seems to have awakened something in him. He's less the appeasing enabler now, more willing to stand firm when needed. Rachel complains about it sometimes, but I suspect she secretly respects him more for it. The children have shown the most dramatic improvement. Caitlin spent 2 weeks with me in August, helping restore the cabin. To my astonishment, she proved to be a dedicated worker, carefully helping me repaint Grace's old bedroom and catalog the remaining antiques. Away from her mother's influence, she revealed a thoughtful, creative personality I'd never glimpsed before. I was awful before, she admitted one evening as we sorted through Grace's book collection. I acted like I didn't care about anything because caring wasn't cool. What changed? I asked. She shrugged, suddenly looking younger than her 14 years. Seeing Mom lose it like that. Hearing what Great-Aunt Grace really thought of us. It was like the mirror I didn't want to look into. Trevor sent a heartfelt letter of apology, accompanied by a handmade gift, a wooden picture frame he'd crafted in summer camp. It now holds a precious photograph of Grace that survived the album disaster. I established clear house rules for family use of the cabin, which I emailed to everyone in September. 1. All visits must be scheduled and approved in advance. 2. Maximum stay, 1 week. 3. No pets, due to allergens in the furnishings. 4. Children must be supervised at all times. 5. Clean up after yourselves, the cabin should be left as you found it. 6. Grace's heirlooms and antiques are not to be moved or used without permission. 7. Respect the neighbors and local environment. To my pleasant surprise, these rules were met with acceptance rather than resistance. Uncle Robert even called to say they were eminently reasonable and should have been established years ago. The vacation rental business I'd tentatively considered has begun to flourish. I rent the cabin out for select weekends to carefully vetted guests who appreciate its history and tranquility. The income helps cover maintenance costs, and the positive reviews have been gratifying. This place has a soul, one guest wrote. You can feel the generations of love and care in every corner. Grace would have been pleased by that assessment. I've finally had time to process her legacy properly. Beyond the physical cabin, she left me something more valuable, the courage to stand firm when it matters, to protect what's precious, to establish healthy boundaries without apology. The relationship between boundaries and generosity is something I've thought about often in recent months. Many people, like Rachel, confuse the two, believing that true generosity means having no boundaries, that loving someone means letting them take whatever they want. Grace knew better. She understood that real generosity must be chosen freely, not coerced or extracted. And she understood that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is say no. That lesson has rippled through other areas of my life as well. I've become more assertive with demanding clients, more protective of my personal time. I've learned to distinguish between genuine emergencies and other people's poor planning. As Grace once told me, not everything that feels urgent to someone else needs to become urgent to you. Some relationships may never be fully healed. Rachel and I have reached a détente rather than true closeness. We're cordial now, even occasionally warm, but the trust that was broken over many years can't be repaired in just a few months. Still, we're trying. She visited once, in October, following all the house rules scrupulously, almost comically careful not to overstep. It was a start. This evening, as snowflakes swirl outside the windows, I sit in Grace's favorite chair by the fire, a cup of her special tea blend warming my hands. On the mantel, Trevor's wooden boat and Caitlin's replacement photo album share space with Grace's recovered jewelry box and a framed copy of her letter to me. Together, they tell a story of loss, conflict, boundary setting, and gradual healing. I feel Grace's presence strongly in these quiet moments, not in any supernatural sense, but in the wisdom she imparted, the example she set, the courage she inspired. The cabin isn't just a building, it's her legacy, her final lesson to me about standing firm in what matters. Outside, the wind picks up, whistling around the eaves. Inside, all is warm and peaceful. The boundaries I've established have created not isolation, but a sanctuary. One that can be selectively shared, on my terms, with those who demonstrate respect. Sometimes protecting what you love means saying no to the people you also love. That's the final lesson Grace taught me, perhaps the most valuable one of all. As I look around this space that is now truly mine, I wonder about your experiences with family boundaries. Have you ever had to stand firm against pressure from loved ones? How did you balance between maintaining relationships and protecting yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these challenges is the greatest comfort of all. Thank you for joining me in this journey, and I wish you the courage to protect what matters most to you, just as Grace taught me to do.